Did you know Mrs. Claus always makes Santa bring an umbrella with him? It's 'cause of the rain, dear. Okay, that's a pretty bad one. Hey, I'm Becca with the Happy Ever Crafter, and I promise I'm not just here to tell you dad jokes. Today I'm walking you through step by step how to make a holiday wood sign like this. It looks complicated, and wood signs can be super overwhelming because it's really hard to fix mistakes when you screw up. So a lot of people just avoid them altogether. But I'm gonna show you my foolproof method, almost feels like cheating kind of method, to make this really, really easy. You can make them for yourself, you can make them for gifts, whatever you wanna do this holiday season. And just like in all of my holiday videos, I'm giving away a set of my holiday brush pens, so make sure you check out the end of the video for how to enter and win those. But let's jump right in. Okay, first things first, tools for this wood sign. The first thing obviously is you need a wood sign. So this is actually a piece of poplar wood that I got at Home Depot. It's just like not a super expensive piece of wood. Then I stained it with espresso stain. And if you've never done this before, if you've never stained your own wood signs, I have a wood sign video, and at the beginning of that one I go through the whole process, so I'm gonna link to that. But you can also buy pre-made pieces of wood that are stained at different craft stores and stuff like that, so you don't have to make your own. Just find some piece of wood that looks nice that you're ready to write on. The next thing is tracing paper. This is a big giant roll of tracing paper. You can get these at craft stores. Then I have a piece of chalk that's sharpened. I have a pencil, any pencil is fine. And then of course I need paint markers. So these are Molotow paint markers. I've used a lot of different kinds of paint markers in the past, and I've found that Molotow is becoming my favorite. It's acrylic paint, and I find that on wood signs, it's the least likely to seep in or the least likely to feather. I really like them. And the other great thing about these is that you can refill them. So they're a bit more environmentally friendly, which is great. This one, this small one you can see is a white one, but this big one is an empty marker. So you just buy a big thing of the color that you like. Obviously I buy a big one of white because I use it a lot, and you can just refill it whenever it's empty. So these are great. Molotow is what I'm gonna be using, but if you don't have those, or if you wanna use a different kind of paint marker, you can use Sharpie. Not quite as opaque, but it's still a good option. Or you can use a brush and actual acrylic paint. You dip your brush in and use it. I just find markers are a lot easier. So that's what I'm using for tools. Okay, step number one is gonna be to take a piece of tracing paper and cut it to the size of your sheet. Now, to save some time in this video, I'm not gonna do this whole process right away. I did a little bit of it earlier. I've already cut my sheet to about the size of my board, and I've already started sketching on my design. So what you're gonna do for step number two is to sketch your design onto the tracing paper to the exact size of the board that you want so that you can easily transfer it. And I'm gonna show you how to do that. So all I've done here is I've written really basic in outlines, "May your days be merry and bright," in my own writing. And I'm gonna make this a little bit better before I transfer it, but basically all you need is a layout of what you wanna put on the board. So I've got my wording, and then around the edges, I'm gonna do some spruce, what are they called? Sprigs of spruce? Branches of spruce. So I'm gonna do those all around the edge. So all I've done is I've drawn these little branches in here, and I'll fill them out after I transfer them onto the board. But the main thing is that you want your lettering to be as accurate as possible so that it's really easy to transfer. So right now I have it all in pencil, but I'm gonna solidify this a little bit better with a marker, and then I'm gonna show you exactly how to transfer it. So again, you can do any design you want. I'm just going over my original sketch in a darker marker now, so you'll be able to see it and it'll be easier to transfer. So I've written a little bit in block letters and a little bit in calligraphy, but again, you can do any design you want to write on your sign, and I'm going to show you exactly how to get it onto your board super, super easily. The more accurate you can make your sketch, the easier it's going to be to not screw up on your board. So you'll notice that I'm thickening exactly the thickness I'm going to want it to be. Some people like to just do an outline when they're gonna do a transfer like this, but I find that sometimes you can get carried away with adding thicknesses and stuff when you're doing faux calligraphy, which is what we're about to do. And having the exact thing you wanna trace on the board is easier in my mind. So make yourself as accurate of a sketch as you can. Okay, so I've got my wording in. Now I'm just gonna line up this tracing paper perfectly with the edges of my board here and draw back in those branches. Now these branches don't have to be as perfect as the lettering is. These are just giving me a basic guideline for where I want to put my sprigs, my branches. I don't know why I always want to call them sprigs. I think it is a word. Can someone tell me in the comments if it is a word? That'd be great. All right, then once you're ready with your sketch and you're happy with it, what you're gonna do is turn it upside down, and this is where the magic happens. So chalk makes a mess, beware, it's gonna get a little bit dusty, so if you're wearing clothes you don't wanna get dusty, maybe go change. But all you're gonna do is take your chalk and go over the back on all the lines that you made. So I suggest working from top to bottom so that you're not rubbing your hand all over the chalk, but you're just putting some chalk dust on every line that you created. Again, on these branches, they don't have to be super accurate, but you're gonna wanna make it really nice and accurate on your lettering. Essentially, whatever you put in chalk right now is gonna transfer onto your wood. Okay, and then on these letters, again, you wanna go really nice and precise. So on the thin strokes, I'm going thin, but on the down strokes, I'm actually outlining both sides of the downstrokes so that I can see exactly where to fill in the thickness. Okay, so now everything on this piece of tracing paper has chalk on it. And the next step is the magical part where you're gonna transfer it onto your board. So turn it back upside down, and this part you're gonna wanna do a little bit carefully so that you don't get chalk smudging everywhere. And you're gonna try and place it down exactly where you want it to go on your board. So that's basically exactly where I want mine. And you can tape it down or you can just hold it down with your arms. I think I'm just gonna go the lazy route and hold it down with my arms. But if you're feeling uncomfortable, definitely tape it. And I'm gonna go over each of these lines with my pencil just to push down some pressure and get the chalk to transfer onto the wood. So you can do this in any order you want. I'm gonna do the lettering first, just so I make sure I don't move my tracing paper. And I'm just gonna trace over all of this lettering once again. So essentially anything that I'm putting pressure on right now is gonna transfer onto the wood sign and become my guideline to do my paint. Now I'm going pretty quickly, and of course in this hyperlapse it's hard for you to see my actual speed, but if you have never done this before and if you're making this a final project for someone, make sure to go nice and slow. Don't rush through this. The more perfect your transfer is, the more perfect it'll be for filling out the letters in your paint. Okay, I've traced over everything, and now for the big reveal, you just have to peel this off. And voila, the easiest trick in the book. You have everything transferred onto here, and now it's super easy to do this without screwing up using your paint markers. Now, again, I did a really simple border of branches here, and I'm gonna fill them up with pine needles. But if you're really uncomfortable with actually filling it up or doing anything on here without having a guideline first, you could draw it on with chalk, or you could do it on your transfer before you peel it off. I'm just pretty comfortable with it. So I'm gonna jump right on with my paint pens. So 2 different sizes of paint pens here. And again, with this, I suggest working from top to bottom so that you're not smudging any paint with your arm. So I'm gonna start at the top here and doing some of my branches with this bigger pen. Now, if you've ever seen any videos that I've talked about doing signage or using paint pens, you wanna have a surface beside you that you can be pushing down on the tip of your pen to make sure that it's always saturated. There's nothing worse than having like chipping paint on your board. So make sure that it's always pushed down, saturated, you're shaking it, and it's just good to go. So I've got this little ruler here that I'm gonna use as my surface. You can use whatever you want, but you're just gonna shake your pen to make sure it's running properly and depress it a couple times on your surface. and then go right onto the board. Now this wood that I'm using is not coated in anything. Some people like to put a polyurethane coating on their wood before they do any lettering or any drawing on it, just so that the paint pen doesn't bleed too much. I don't find that it's a huge problem for me, so I actually didn't seal this board. But if you want to, just look for a polyurethane. You can get spray or you can get it as a brush on, and you can spray it on before you letter. You just have to make sure it's really, really dry before you do anything on it. So yeah, there's not a ton to explain about this part of the process. You're essentially just tracing over all of your lines, making sure not to smudge as I go. And you'll notice that as I work, it does sort of start to seep into the wood. It's not gonna be like a super bright white like it would with a Cricut machine, but it'll be bright enough that you can see what you need to on the sign. All right, now I'm switching to my smaller pen and I'm gonna start doing these letters. Again, you can go nice and slow if this isn't something you're used to doing. It's really hard to fix mistakes on wood signs if you mess up, so just take your time. If you do mess up, and I'm probably jinxing myself thinking that I won't have to show you how to fix it with any of my own mistakes, but if you do mess up and you catch it quick enough, sometimes you can get it off with a Q-tip and just a little bit of light scrubbing action on the paint right away to get it off. But oftentimes you actually end up having to resand and restain that one spot. So really doing your best not to make any mistakes. And that's why this chalk transfer process is so awesome, because you're essentially just tracing. Now, one thing to note about doing big words like this, like what I'm doing right now, we are doing faux calligraphy, meaning that you're not adding pressures to make the lines thinner and thicker. You are actually going back and thickening certain parts. So if you don't know what I'm doing right now and you've never seen this and you don't know how to do faux calligraphy, you need to know how to do that, to do this exact design that I'm doing. I have a couple videos and I have actually a course that's $5 and all the proceeds go to charity that teaches you exactly how to do faux calligraphy. So if you're interested in that, I'll link to it. But basically what you need to know when you're doing faux calligraphy on a sign like this is that you have to do the thickening portions as you go, because you need to make sure that the paint is still wet. You don't want to be going back over the paint later on. So you don't want to write your whole word in an outline and then go back to thicken, because it's harder to fill it in when it's not wet anymore. So just making sure that you're doing one stroke at a time when you're doing signs like this. Okay, the outlines are all done of the branches and everything's filled in, and now I'm just gonna go in and add all the pine needles that I wanted to fill up these branches. So it's pretty simple. You just wanna make sure this is dry so when your hand rests on it, you're not smudging. And basically all I'm gonna do is add some angled lines like this and fill in some pine needles. These lines do not have to be perfect. In fact, the more imperfect they are, the better they're gonna look. Just more natural. But we're just making a fun little border here. And there you have it, your completed sign. So if you notice that you have any pieces or any bits of chalk left over, once your pen is dry, your paint pen, you can just use your finger and smudge it off. And if you notice that depending on what type of wood you're using, your paint pen has bled into the wood a lot and you're noticing it's not very bright, you can totally do another coat, or you can even take this kind of paint and just use a brush, a paintbrush, and dip it in and go over everything one more time. It depends on the type of wood you're using and what markers you're using. You might notice it worse than others on different types of wood. But for mine, I'm really happy with the way this turned out, and I'm actually all finished. Now the last thing you could do if you don't want this to ever be affected by the elements. So if you're planning on putting this sign outside, then you might want to seal it. Now, I will be honest, I don't seal the majority of my signs because most of what I do doesn't go outside. But if you're gonna put this one outside and it's gonna get touched by snow and stuff because it is a holiday sign, you're gonna probably wanna use sealant. And my recommendation for that is polyurethane. You can buy cans of it. There's lots of different brands. Just go to the hardware store or the craft store and ask for it. Basically, all you're gonna do is like a really light spray paint kind of coat on top. You could do multiple coats, just read the instructions on the can. It's pretty straightforward and it should be good to go. But if you're not putting it outside, you're totally fine to just leave it like this. Now, the last thing before I let you go is I'm giving away a set of these holiday brush pens, as I do in every single holiday video that I ever have, and they're not available anywhere else. So to enter and win a set of these brush pens, all you have to do is 3 things. 1, hit subscribe on the channel. 2, hit like on this video. And 3, leave me a comment down below telling me your favorite holiday song. And that's it. I'll do a random draw in 1 week from when this video goes live and I'll notify the winner. Hopefully you like this video. I'd love to see yours if you create a sign like this, so make sure to tag me at the Happy Ever Crafter. And if you want more crafty holiday videos, I'm gonna link to the next one for you and I'll see you over there.